are so many bloody books. Hello fellow humans and welcome to the Madhouse. I'm Josh and today I'm going to do a little book haul. It's not my autumn haul, which you'll still get at the end of the month. This is an extra one. It is an academic book haul, and why am I pointing at my brain? That probably says something about my ego. So all of the books in this video are books that I have had to buy for my studies at university this year. Up first are A Little Aloud, edited by Angela Macmillan, and Staying Alive, edited by Neil Astley. I mentioned these two together because I studied them together, so viewing them as independent works is a little difficult at the moment, although I'm sure I will get there eventually. They are anthologies of prose and poetry, pieces designed to make someone feel happy, to lift them out of the dark spaces and fan that little spark of happiness into a roaring inferno of joy. Roaring infernos aren't that joyous. It's a bit threatening actually. Whatever, very happy. There's some really nice poems in here. Some of them are a bit freaky and others, they're just so nice and sweet, and I really urge you to pick them up and read them for yourselves. Next up there is Aphra Behn's The Rover. The Rover is a play by Behn, who is the first professional female writer in English history. It's a very fun read. It's kind of a romance between a soon-to-be nun and a pirate, and there's lots of intrigue and trickery and intricate plots which are typical of Renaissance plays and comedies. Very, very funny, full of action and, well, you might call it raunchy depending on the performance of it you saw. Very, very good. You'll love it. And I mean, really, out of all of these books I'm mentioning today, this is the one that I recommend the most highly. Heirs by its possession. I have read this one, and if you watched any of my previous videos over the past month and a half, shall we say, you'll know that I was not particularly fond of this because it's overly clever in my view. It was well written, I can say that simply enough, but it tried to be far too clever in my view. It's about literature, how it impacts on people's lives and can shape them, how it can lead people to fall in love, and, well, it's not my sort of thing, but I can see how very clever it is. I mean, the fact that Byatt manages to recreate the styles of Christina Rossetti and Alfred Lord Tennyson, and, what's the name of the other poem? I'm thinking Robert Browning, and writes original poems like that, shows how good it is, but it's just not for me. If you're into literary study and romance, then this is definitely something you'll enjoy. Mr. Pip by Lloyd Jones, which is of course a reference to Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. It's a fun book and it involves racial relationships, the nature of education, and again how literature can impact upon people. It's very, very good. I think I gave it about 3 stars because I'm not overly fond of Great Expectations to begin with. The only Dickens I really enjoy is A Christmas Carol, speaking of which I think I might do a reading of that over Christmas. There was Elizabeth Gaskell's North and South, which I have to say I haven't read yet because this is for a class I have in my second semester after the Christmas holidays and the exams, unfortunately. But it's apparently quite good. It's from my Victorian literature module, so automatically that's dated, and I'll read the blurb to you. North and South tells the story of Margaret Hale, a southerner newly settled in the northern industrial town of Milton, whose ready sympathy with the discontented mill workers sits uneasily with her growing attraction to the charismatic mill owner, John Thornton. The novel poses fundamental questions about the nature of social authority and obedience, ranging from religious crises of conscience to the ethics of naval mutiny and industrial action. Margaret's internal conflicts mirror the turbulence that she sees all around her. Maybe this interests me because I'm a northerner and hence I like to read books about the north, and I find the history of the hyper-industrialised towns to be quite fascinating. I've lived in 2 of them. Another very Victorian book is Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. Now, you should know this one. It's quite different from the musical, but you will get the underlying idea of the story from that. I mean, it's a lot of fun, that film. Consider yourself a mate. Consider yourself part of the family. I'm doing a lot of singing on camera lately. This is not good. Up next is Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. Now, you should know the story for this one, and most of the characters, in fact, from a really fun film, if a bit strange and not particularly faithful, because in the film, Fagin is made to be a far more likeable character, while in this, Fagin is portrayed as very, 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 very stereotypically Jewish, and not in a good way. He's not a nice character. You wouldn't want to hang around with him. By all accounts, it's an example of classic literature. To be fair, the last time I tried to read this book, I was 9 years old, so perhaps I wasn't quite the intended audience for it. So I'm going to read this over Christmas and I'll come back to you with my thoughts, but I'm actually looking forward to it. There is Robert Louis Stevenson's Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Other Tales. Now, I do so love Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. In fact, I have another copy of it in here, my Scottish Classics collection. It's a very, very good book, an exploration about the nature of morality, whether or not morality is independent of society, or if it's something that's innate and can be disposed of with a potion. It's very, very fantastic and a great read. Plus, I like the almost, what's that word? I find books about dual personalities quite fascinating. I was going to say schizophrenic, but that's not a great word for that kind of thing. John Ruskin in selected writings. This one, I must say that I know next to nothing about. I've never heard of John Ruskin. I don't know what his selected writings were about, but I had to buy it for my Victorian literature module again. A lot of Victorian shit. It says here that Ruskin was the most powerful and influential critic of the 19th century. He wrote about nature, art, architecture, politics, history, myth, and much besides. All his work is characterized by a clarity of vision, as unsettling and intense now as it was for his first readers. This new selection draws on the whole range of his astonishingly varied output, from the passionate celebration of J.M.W. Turner's painting in the first volume of Modern Painters to Praeterita, the elegiac autobiography of his later years. The introduction outlines Ruskin's life and thought, and shows why he remains such a rewarding writer today. Well, to be honest, that sounds kind of boring to me, but I shall give it a go. I have to give it a go. Villette by Charlotte Bronte is another one. I've never read it. I've never been a big fan of the Bronte sisters. What was it? Wuthering Heights was just terrible in my view, and Jane Eyre was barely tolerable. I'm not a big fan of, well, I don't like to use the phrase, but almost wishy-washy books. I dislike overt sentimentality. I don't really get it. I don't understand the need for it, but I can appreciate that the prose is excellently done in every Bronte book I've read. I can never remember which Bronte wrote what, but I shall give it a go. This one is just says that it is based on Charlotte Bronte's personal experience as a teacher in Brussels. Villette is a moving tale of repressed feelings and subjection to cruel circumstance and position, born with heroic fortitude. Rising above the frustrations of confinement within a rigid social order, it is also a story of a woman's right to love and be loved. Well, that actually sounds practically feminist. So, I might actually enjoy this. I mean, it won't be feminist by the modern terms of it, but certainly proto-feminist. And the last physical book is My Duden, which is a German dictionary. It's particularly good. There's a lot of references in there and lots of grammatical help. But I do have one select problem that this is a 1991 edition, so if I remember correctly, that is pre-spelling reform. So some of the words in here are incorrect in how they are spelt, but it's useful enough for the majority of the time that it doesn't make a difference. Besides, it was £2 from a charity shop rather than, well, several more if I were to buy it brand new. There was Dr. Faustus by Christopher Marlowe, which is one of my favourites. It's fantastic, really. It's a story of, well, Faust, the German legend of Faust, an academic who makes a deal with the devil in pursuit of knowledge, although in the case of Marlowe's Faustus, it's more in the pursuit of power. A fascinating look into the nature of academia, whether or not it's necessarily good or evil, and whether or not people can be redeemed of their evil, or if they're damned from the beginning. There is a book here which I haven't read yet, because we're starting that next week in class, and I have been very busy and ill in the past few weeks. So after work this weekend, I'm going to read it. It is John Webster's The White Devil. I have no idea what this one is about, I'm afraid. There is Ben Jonson's The Alchemist, which is not the Paulo Coelho one. This one is about alchemists purporting to be able to cure the plague and conning people, and it's a look into social structures and mobility and the nature of power within, would this have been Jacobean or Elizabethan England around that time. There is Thomas Decker's and Thomas Middleton's The Roaring Girl, and my first thought when I heard the title was that it was set in the 1920s, but I was wrong. It's part of my early modern drama module, so it's in fact Shakespearean times. I have no idea what this one is about, I'm afraid. Can't help you. Let's find out together. Or not, I'll find out myself when I have to read it. There is also Philip Massinger's A New Way to Pay Old Debts, another play from the early modern period, but I have no idea what it's about. There is also Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I shouldn't have to explain what this one is about. You know, just monster, the creator, although really the creator is a monster as well. It's very good. And lastly, Die Verwandlung by Franz Kafka, that is The Metamorphosis. If you've never read that, well, prepare for some really freaky shit. I can't explain, I'm sorry. It's beyond me. But it's very, very clever. If you haven't read Kafka, whether in German or in English or whatever language you happen to like reading books in, do it, because it's worth it. And that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope I haven't waffled on or just been completely incoherent, because I really worry that I have been today. I don't feel like I'm speaking as well as I should be. In fact, I almost feel like I'm lisping and not speaking clearly enough. But I fear that's probably to do with the flu I have at the moment. See, I didn't pronounce the T at the end of moment. I'm doing it again. Never mind. If you enjoyed it, well, why don't you let me know in the form of likes and comments, and if you're new, subscribing. Or not, if you have bored you, but whatever. If you're interested in picking up any of these books, I would really appreciate it if you would consider using my book depository affiliate link, because if you do, I will receive a small commission. Anyway, until next time, which, unless I'm abducted by aliens, should be Friday, goodbye!